My name is Vexenamorthal, and I am what you humans would call completely screwed. Not literally, mind you, though given the circumstances, that might have been preferable. You see, I am the Supreme Battle Coordinator of the Galactic Hegemony, third in command of a fleet that spans 17 star systems, and currently standing in the most awkward position of my 400-year lifespan. The problem? Queen Zaralyn Vextar wants to know why I have been avoiding her. Let me back up a bit. 3 months ago, our fleet intercepted a human research vessel drifting near the Proxima Nebula. Standard procedure: board, interrogate, assimilate, or eliminate. Simple stuff, really. What we found instead was, well, let me put it this way. If you have ever seen a Krillian ice worm try to mate with a plasma conduit, you would understand the level of confusion we experienced. The ship contained exactly one human. One single human. His name was Marcus Kane, and he was ordinary. Completely, utterly, mind-numbingly ordinary. Brown hair, brown eyes, average height, wearing what appeared to be some sort of maintenance jumpsuit. He looked at our boarding party, our weapons, our imposing bio-armor, and said, "Oh, hi there. You guys look lost. Need directions?" Captain Thexmore, a veteran of 37 successful invasions, actually took a step back. I do not blame him. In all our encounters with humans, they either screamed, begged, or tried to fight. This one offered us coffee. "It is not very good coffee," Marcus had said, leading us to what he called the mess hall. "But it is hot, and honestly, you all look like you could use a warm drink. That armor must get pretty stuffy, huh?" I watched 3 of our best interrogation specialists sit down at his tiny table and accept beverages from a species we were supposed to be conquering. The universe, I realized, had developed a sense of humor. But here is where things got complicated. Queen Zaralyn Vextar, ruler of the hegemony, decided she wanted to meet this unusual human personally. Our queen, you understand, is not someone who takes no for an answer. She stands 9 feet tall, has skin that shifts between deep purple and silver depending on her mood, and possesses psychic abilities that could crush a moon if she really put her mind to it. She is also, apparently, utterly fascinated by Marcus Kane. "Bring him to my chambers," she had commanded. "I wish to study this creature." The way she said study made my secondary stomach clench. Our queen has a reputation, you see, a reputation for being very thorough in her examinations of interesting specimens. The last ambassador who caught her attention ended up as a decorative fountain in her garden. He is still alive, by the way, still screaming too. So naturally, I did what any reasonable battle coordinator would do. I stalled. "Your Majesty," I had said, "perhaps we should run some preliminary tests first. Make sure the human is not contaminated with some sort of biological weapon." She tilted her head, those silver eyes fixing on me with the intensity of a neutron star. "You think this, Marcus, poses a threat to me?" "Not exactly a threat, Your Majesty. More like a puzzle that requires careful analysis." That bought me 2 weeks. The next excuse was easier. "Your Majesty, the human appears to have some sort of technological implant that might interfere with your psychic abilities. We should remove it first." Marcus, of course, had no implants. What he did have was a really old hearing aid that barely worked, and a steel plate in his left shin from what he called a skiing accident. But it gave me another week. Then came the food poisoning excuse. "Your Majesty, the human's digestive system is incompatible with our environment. He became violently ill after consuming standard rations." This was partially true. Marcus had indeed become sick, but only because someone fed him Krillian battle paste, which is essentially edible napalm. He recovered after about 6 hours and spent the rest of the day teaching our medical staff how to play something called poker. They lost 17 months' worth of combat pay to him. By week 4, I was running out of excuses, and the Queen was running out of patience. "Vexana," she said during our morning briefing, her voice carrying that particular tone that meant someone was about to become a decorative garden feature. "Why is it that every time I request to see the human, you find another reason to delay?" I felt my biosuit's temperature regulation system kick into overdrive. "Your Majesty, I simply want to ensure that—" "That what? That he will not somehow contaminate me with his ordinariness." She moved closer, and I caught a whiff of ozone and something that smelled suspiciously like vanilla. The Queen always smelled like vanilla when she was either very angry or very interested. I was really hoping it was anger. "You have been in charge of his containment for over a month, Vexana. You have spent more time with this human than anyone else on this ship. Tell me, what is so special about him that you feel the need to protect him from me?" And there it was, the question I had been dreading. Because the truth was, Marcus Kane was special. Just not in any way our databases could quantify. He fixed things, not just mechanical things, though he was surprisingly good at that. He had somehow repaired our waste recycling system using nothing but spare parts and what he called elbow grease. He fixed problems. He fixed people. Lieutenant Kexaval had been suffering from what you humans might call depression after losing his entire squadron in the Battle of Rigel 7. Marcus spent 3 days teaching him how to knit. Knitting, for crying out loud. Now Kexaval makes tiny sweaters for the ship's maintenance drones and hasn't had a violent breakdown in weeks. Ensign Mordek had chronic insomnia from nightmares about his first combat mission. Marcus introduced him to something called chamomile tea and the concept of bedtime stories. Now Mordek sleeps like a larval grub and actually volunteers for extra shifts. The human was pleasant, helpful, kind, even to species that had conquered his homeworld. He never asked for anything in return, never complained about his accommodations, and had somehow convinced half our crew that humans were not the savage, war-mongering species our propaganda claimed them to be. He was dangerous in the most subtle, terrifying way possible. He was making us better. "Your Majesty," I began carefully, "the human is unusual." "Unusual how?" "How do you explain to a being of immense psychic power and virtually unlimited authority that a maintenance worker from Earth was slowly converting her entire fleet through the strategic application of coffee and conversation? He appears to have some sort of pacification field," I said, hoping she would buy it. Her eyebrow ridges rose slightly. "Pacification field?" "Yes, Your Majesty. Anyone who spends extended time in his presence becomes calmer, more cooperative. It could be some sort of pheromone release, or perhaps a low-level telepathic influence." This was complete nonsense, of course. Marcus Kane possessed all the psychic ability of a particularly dense asteroid. But it sounded scientific enough to be believable. The Queen leaned back in her throne, considering this. "Interesting. And you believe this field might affect me as well?" "It is possible, Your Majesty, and given your responsibilities to the hegemony." She was quiet for a long moment, those silver eyes studying me with uncomfortable intensity. Then she smiled. Not the predatory smile she usually wore when contemplating new ways to terrorize her enemies. This was different, calculating. "Vexana," she said softly, I want you to bring Marcus Kane to my private dining chamber tonight, and I want you to remain present during our conversation." My secondary heart skipped a beat. "Your Majesty? If this human possesses some sort of influence ability, then I will need someone unaffected to monitor the situation. You have been exposed to him for over a month with no apparent ill effects. You will serve as my control group." I wanted to point out that I had been affected, just not in ways that showed up on medical scans. Marcus had taught me to appreciate the concept of small talk, introduced me to the revolutionary idea that not every conversation had to end with someone being vaporized, and somehow convinced me that efficiency was not the only measure of worth in the universe. But explaining that to the Queen seemed like a fast track to becoming garden art. "Of course, Your Majesty. Shall I prepare any special security measures?" "Just the standard privacy shields." "And Vexana?" She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than her usual roar. "If you try to delay this meeting again, I will personally demonstrate why I am called the Queen of 1,000 Screams." I bowed as low as my biosuit would allow. "Understood, Your Majesty." As I left her presence chamber, I could not shake the feeling that I was walking toward some sort of cosmic disaster. The Queen wanted to meet Marcus, and there was no way to prevent it without revealing that I had been compromised by prolonged exposure to human decency. I found Marcus in what used to be Storage Bay 7, but had somehow been converted into something he called a workshop. He was bent over a damaged power coupling, humming some sort of tune while he worked. 3 junior engineers watched him with the fascination usually reserved for religious experiences. "Marcus," I said, and he looked up with that infuriating smile of his. "Oh, hey Vex, how did the meeting with Her Royal Majesty go?" I had told him never to call me Vex, but somehow he had worn down my resistance through sheer persistence and the strategic application of compliments about my tactical abilities. "The Queen wishes to meet with you tonight. Private dining chamber." His smile faltered slightly. "Oh, that sounds formal." "Indeed. And Marcus?" I moved closer, lowering my voice. "Whatever you do, do not be yourself." He blinked at me with those ridiculously expressive brown eyes. "I'm sorry." "What?" "Do not be helpful. Do not be kind. Do not offer her coffee or ask about her day, or teach her any of your human things." "Vex, you're scaring me a little bit here." I grabbed his shoulders, probably harder than I should have. "Marcus, listen to me very carefully. Our Queen is not like the crew members you have been befriending. She is ancient, powerful, and has very specific ideas about how conversations with inferior species should proceed. If you try to treat her like you treat everyone else, she will either kill you immediately or keep you as a pet. Neither option ends well for you." He studied my face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "So, be respectful and formal. Got it. More than that, be boring. Be exactly what she expects a captured human to be. Afraid, subservient, unremarkable." "I can do unremarkable," he said with a grin that suggested he absolutely could not. As the ship's chronometer ticked toward evening, I found myself pacing my quarters like a caged fusion cat. Every instinct I possessed screamed that this meeting was going to be a disaster. The Queen expected to encounter either a cowering prisoner or a dangerous adversary. What she was going to get was Marcus Kane, a man who once spent 4 hours explaining the proper way to make scrambled eggs to our head chef, who then completely redesigned the galley menu around human breakfast foods. The man was a walking diplomatic incident. A soft chime indicated that it was time. I made my way to the Queen's private dining chamber, stopping only to collect Marcus from his workshop. He had actually tried to dress up for the occasion, which in his case meant putting on a slightly cleaner jumpsuit and running his fingers through his hair. "How do I look?" he asked. "Like bait," I thought. "Adequate," I said instead. The Queen's dining chamber was designed to intimidate. The walls were lined with trophies from conquered worlds. The ceiling showed a real-time view of the void outside, and the table itself was carved from a single piece of what looked suspiciously like fossilized bone. Queen Zara Lynn Vextar sat at the head of this monument to imperial excess, wearing ceremonial robes that seemed to absorb light itself. Her silver eyes tracked our movement as we approached, and I felt that familiar mix of respect and terror that came with being in her presence. "Your Majesty," I said, executing a perfect formal bow. "I present Marcus Kane, the human captive." Marcus, to his credit, managed a reasonably respectful nod. "Your Majesty, thank you for, having me for dinner?" I closed my eyes briefly. Even when he was trying to be formal, the man could not help but sound friendly. The Queen's expression did not change, but I caught a flicker of something in her eyes. Amusement? Curiosity? Hunger? With her, it was often hard to tell the difference. "Sit," she commanded, gesturing to a chair positioned directly across from her. Marcus sat. I remained standing at attention near the wall, close enough to intervene if necessary, but far enough away to avoid becoming collateral damage. "So," the Queen said, her voice carrying across the chamber like silk over steel, "you are the human who has been entertaining my crew." "I wouldn't say entertaining, Your Majesty. More like helping out where I can." Wrong answer. I could see it in the subtle shift of the Queen's posture, the way her fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on her goblet. "Helping," she repeated. "How noble of you. Tell me, Marcus Kane of Earth, what do you hope to gain from these helpful acts?" Marcus actually looked confused by the question. "Gain? Well, nothing really. It just seemed like the right thing to do." The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. The Queen studied Marcus with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey, while Marcus sat there looking genuinely puzzled by her question. Finally, she leaned forward slightly. "Nothing? You expect me to believe that you provide assistance to your captors, improve their equipment, boost their morale, all without expecting anything in return?" "Well, yes. Why?" And there it was. The question I had been dreading. Because Marcus Kane was about to do what Marcus Kane always did when asked a direct question. He was going to give an honest answer. "Because," he said, settling back in his chair with that easy confidence that somehow never came across as arrogance. "Being helpful makes things better for everyone, including me." The Queen's expression shifted, subtly. "Explain." "Well, when I fixed the waste recycling system, it meant the whole ship smelled better. When I taught Kexavel how to knit, he stopped having those nightmares that made him scream at all hours. When I showed the galley staff how to prepare food that actually tastes good," he shrugged, "everyone was happier. And when everyone around you is happier, your life gets better too." I watched the Queen process this explanation, her silver eyes never leaving Marcus's face. This was not going according to script. In her experience, captives either begged for mercy or plotted escape. They did not calmly explain their philosophy of enlightened self-interest. "You are either very naive," she said finally, "or very clever." Marcus actually laughed. Not the nervous laughter of someone trying to diffuse tension, but genuine amusement. I get that a lot, usually from my ex-wife. And just like that, the atmosphere in the room shifted. The Queen, who had been leaning forward with predatory interest, settled back in her chair. Her expression softened somehow. You were married? Past tense, yeah. Sarah. Well, let's just say she had some very strong opinions about my career choices. Which were? I fixed things for a living. Maintenance, repair, troubleshooting. She wanted me to be more ambitious. Get a management position, make more money, climb the corporate ladder. He shrugged again. But I liked fixing things. Still do. The Queen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its imperious edge. And yet, here you are, fixing things for your enemies. Are you my enemy? The question hung in the air like an unexploded warhead. I felt my biosuit's combat systems automatically run a diagnostic check, preparing for the possibility that I might need to either protect Marcus from the Queen's wrath, or protect the Queen from, well, from whatever Marcus Kane might turn out to be. But the Queen just smiled. Not the predatory smile from before, but something almost genuine. That, she said, remains to be seen. The dinner that followed was unlike anything I had witnessed in my 4 centuries of military service. The Queen, who normally consumed her meals in absolute silence while reviewing tactical reports, actually engaged in conversation. Real conversation, not the usual interrogation techniques she employed on prisoners. Marcus, apparently unaware that he was supposed to be terrified, asked her about the decorative weapons mounted on the walls. That curved blade there? Is that ceremonial or functional? Both, the Queen replied, cutting into what appeared to be roasted Altarian bird. It belonged to War Prince Kethmore of the 7th Fleet. I took it from him after our forces crushed his rebellion. Did you kill him? I nearly choked on my own breathing apparatus. Nobody asked the Queen direct questions about her conquests. Nobody. But she merely raised an eyebrow. Would it bother you if I had? Marcus considered this while chewing what I recognized as synthesized protein paste, though the galley staff had apparently learned to season it properly. I guess that depends on whether he deserved it. He slaughtered 3 colony worlds before I stopped him. Then yeah, probably deserved it. The Queen actually paused mid-bite, studying Marcus with renewed interest. You do not condemn me for taking a life? Your Majesty, I spent 6 years working maintenance on military vessels. I've seen what happens when bad people get powerful weapons and nobody stops them. He gestured with his fork toward another trophy. That staff thing next to the blade. What's its story? And just like that, we were back to casual conversation. The Queen began explaining the origin of each piece in her collection, and Marcus listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions that showed he was actually paying attention. I stood there, watching my terrifying sovereign explain the finer points of Krillian battle tactics to a human maintenance worker, and felt reality shifting around me like gravity had decided to flow sideways. You seem troubled, Battle Coordinator, the Queen said suddenly, those silver eyes fixing on me. Not troubled, Your Majesty. Merely observant. Observing what, exactly? I glanced at Marcus, who was now examining a crystallized energy weapon with the same intensity he brought to broken power couplings. How do you tell your Queen that she was being humanized? The prisoner appears to be adapting well to captivity, I said carefully. Marcus looked up from the weapon. Captivity? Is that what this is? The silence that followed felt like standing in the path of an incoming asteroid. The Queen's expression went perfectly neutral, which, in my experience, was far more dangerous than her usual predatory intensity. "You do not consider yourself a prisoner?" she asked. Marcus set down his fork and really looked at her for the first time since sitting down. Not the polite attention he had been paying to her stories, but the kind of direct assessment I had seen him use when evaluating a particularly complex mechanical problem. "Your Majesty, with respect, I've been living in comfortable quarters, eating regular meals, working on projects that interest me, and spending time with people who seem to enjoy my company." He shrugged. "If this is captivity, it's a lot better than my last job." "Your last job?" "Corporate maintenance contract, 60-hour weeks, no overtime pay, and a supervisor who thought please and thank you were signs of weakness." Marcus picked up his fork again. "Plus, nobody there ever asked my opinion about ancient weaponry or invited me to dinner in rooms with windows that show actual space. This is kind of amazing, honestly." I watched the Queen's face cycle through several expressions before settling on something that might have been bewilderment. In all her centuries of rule, she had probably never encountered a prisoner who rated their captivity based on work-life balance. "You are content here?" "Content might be too strong a word, but yeah, I'm okay with the situation, though I do miss coffee. The stuff I made for your crew was terrible, but it was better than nothing." "Coffee?" "It's a human stimulant beverage, made from ground beans. Probably doesn't sound appealing to you, but humans kind of need it to function properly." The Queen leaned forward slightly. "And you have been without this coffee for over a month?" "Yeah, but it's fine. I mean, I get headaches sometimes, and my energy levels are pretty low, and I've been more irritable than usual, but—" "Vexana." The Queen's voice cut through Marcus's explanation like a blade through tissue paper. "Why was I not informed that our guest had dietary requirements that were not being met?" "Guest." She called him a guest. "Your Majesty, human dietary needs are quite similar to standard provisions. The lack of coffee is merely an inconvenience, not a medical necessity. Nevertheless, you will research this beverage and determine if it can be synthesized or acquired." She turned back to Marcus. "Is there anything else you require for your comfort?" Marcus actually looked embarrassed. "Really, Your Majesty? You don't need to." "I insist." "Well—" He hesitated, glancing at me as if asking permission. I had no idea what expression to make, so I just stared at him. "I guess it would be nice to know if my replacement at the orbital station is doing okay with the fusion reactor maintenance. That system is pretty temperamental, and if Jim doesn't recalibrate the containment field every 72 hours. You are concerned about work being done properly in your absence?" "Of course. I mean, if that reactor goes critical, it could take out half the station. Probably kill a couple hundred people." The Queen exchanged a look with me that I could not interpret. "Vexana, contact the human orbital facility and determine the status of their fusion reactor maintenance." "Your Majesty." "You heard me." This was rapidly spiraling beyond my ability to predict or control. The Queen was not just conversing with Marcus, she was actively accommodating his concerns about people who were, technically, enemies of the state. "Marcus," the Queen said, her voice taking on a tone I had never heard before, "may I ask you a personal question?" "Sure. Why do you care? About the reactor? About my crew? About any of this? You owe us nothing. We took you from your ship, brought you here against your will, and you respond with kindness. Why?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his plate. When he looked up, his expression was more serious than I had ever seen it. "Your Majesty, can I tell you about my father?" The Queen nodded. He was a structural engineer, worked on bridges mostly. Big ones, the kind that carry thousands of people every day. Marcus smiled slightly. When I was a kid, he used to take me to construction sites. I'd watch him crawl around in the support beams, checking every bolt, every weld, every connection. And I asked him once why he spent so much time on parts that nobody would ever see. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. He told me that the invisible parts were the most important ones, that you could have the most beautiful bridge in the world, but if one small support beam failed, the whole thing would collapse, and all those people who trusted that bridge to get them safely across would fall. The Queen was listening with complete attention now. He said that being responsible for other people's safety was the most important job anyone could have, and that if you took shortcuts, if you did sloppy work, if you only cared about the parts that showed, eventually people got hurt. Marcus looked directly at the Queen. So, when I see something that needs fixing, I fix it. Because maybe it's just a waste recycling system that makes the air smell better. But maybe it's the one thing that keeps something bigger from breaking down. And maybe that breakdown would hurt people who are just trying to live their lives. The silence stretched between them like a bridge itself, and I found myself holding my breath. Finally, the Queen spoke. "Your father sounds like a wise man." He was. Died when I was 23. Bridge collapse, actually. Not one he built, Marcus added quickly. That was the ironic part. His bridges never failed. This was some corporate cost-cutting disaster in another city. But he was part of the rescue team, trying to save people trapped in the wreckage. He died helping strangers? Yeah. Mom said it was typical. He never could walk past someone who needed help. The Queen set down her goblet with deliberate precision. And you believe you inherited this compulsion? I guess so, though I'm not nearly as brave as he was. No? The Queen's voice carried a note of something that might have been amusement. You are sitting calmly at dinner with a being who could destroy your entire species with a thought, treating her as if she were a friend rather than a predator. Most would consider that quite brave. Marcus actually laughed. Your Majesty, you've been nothing but polite to me. You invited me to dinner, you're asking about my family, you're making sure I have everything I need. If you wanted to hurt me, you wouldn't go to all this trouble first. I watched the Queen's expression shift again, this time settling on something that looked almost like respect? You trust me? Should I not? Most beings in your position would be planning escape routes or looking for weapons they could use against me. Most beings in my position probably didn't spend an hour yesterday teaching your head of security how to properly maintain his sidearm so it wouldn't jam in combat. The Queen turned those silver eyes on me. Is this true, Battle Coordinator? I felt heat rise in my biosuit's cooling system. The human did provide some technical assistance with equipment maintenance issues. Technical assistance, she repeated. He helped you improve our weapons so they would function better against his own species? In fairness, Marcus interjected, Kexmore's pistol was so poorly maintained, it was more dangerous to him than to anyone he might shoot at. Basic safety, really. The Queen was quiet for a very long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Stand up. Marcus stood immediately, though I could see confusion in his eyes. The Queen rose as well, her full 9-foot height making him look like a child by comparison. Kneel! My secondary heart stopped entirely. This was it. Whatever spell Marcus had woven around the crew, it had finally reached its limit. The Queen was going to but Marcus just looked puzzled. "Your Majesty?" "You heard me, human. Kneel." Marcus glanced at me, still looking confused but not frightened. Then he did something that defied every protocol, every expectation, every reasonable prediction I could have made. He shook his head. "I don't think I will, Your Majesty." The temperature in the room seemed to drop by several degrees. I felt my biosuit's combat systems automatically engage, though I had no idea whether I should be protecting Marcus from the Queen or the Queen from whatever Marcus was about to become. "You refuse?" "It's nothing personal," Marcus said calmly. "But my father taught me that you only kneel for two reasons. Either because someone has earned your respect through their actions, or because someone is forcing you to through violence. And since you haven't used violence, and I don't yet know what you've done to earn my respect..." He shrugged. "I'll stand, if that's okay with you." The silence that followed was the kind that makes you wonder if time itself has stopped working. The Queen stared down at Marcus with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not surprise, but something far more complex. Then, to my complete and utter astonishment, she smiled. Not the predatory smile, not the diplomatic smile, but something genuine and warm and completely unprecedented. "Fascinating," she said softly. "Absolutely fascinating." And then Queen Zaralyn Vexitar, ruler of the galactic hegemony, terror of 17 star systems, the being whose very name made hardened warriors weep, knelt before a human maintenance worker. Marcus took a step back, his eyes wide with shock. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" "Something I have never done before," she said, still kneeling. "I am showing respect to someone who earned it through their actions." What? I haven't done anything special." "You have done something extraordinary, Marcus Kane. You have treated my people with kindness when you owed them nothing. You have improved their lives when you gained nothing. You have shown me that strength without compassion is merely brutality, and that true power lies in lifting others up rather than grinding them down." She rose gracefully to her feet. "You have reminded me of who I wanted to be before I became who I needed to be." Marcus looked like he was processing a system overload. Your Majesty, I just tried to be helpful." "Yes," she said, reaching out to place one elegant hand on his shoulder. "And in doing so, you have helped more than you know." She turned to me, and for the first time in decades, I saw something other than imperial authority in her expression. I saw peace. "Battle Coordinator Vexana Morthul, I hereby promote you to Fleet Admiral. Your new assignment will be to establish diplomatic relations with the human colonial authority." My biosuit nearly shut down from shock. "Your Majesty, if there are more humans like Marcus Kane, then perhaps it is time the hegemony learned something new." She smiled at Marcus. "And if Marcus agrees, I would like him to serve as our first human cultural advisor." Marcus blinked at her. What would that involve?" "Teaching us to fix things the way you do. Not just machines, but everything else." He was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I think I'd like that. But I have one condition." The Queen raised an eyebrow. "You dare to negotiate terms with me?" "Just one small thing," Marcus said with that easy smile of his. "Can we get some real coffee for this ship? Because if I'm going to be teaching people how to fix things, I'm going to need caffeine." The Queen's laughter filled the chamber like music, bright and joyous and completely transformative. And as I watched these two beings, from species that had been enemies just hours before, sharing a moment of genuine connection, I realized something profound. Sometimes the most important repairs are the ones nobody sees coming. 6 months later, the Human Colonial Authority signed the first peace treaty in galactic history that included provisions for regular coffee shipments and mandatory maintenance training for all fleet personnel. Marcus Kane became the most unlikely diplomat in known space, and Queen Zara Lynn Vextar became known as the first hegemony ruler to apologize to a conquered species. As for me, well, I'm still trying to figure out how a maintenance worker from Earth managed to fix the one thing nobody thought was broken: the assumption that different species couldn't be friends. But then again, that's what Marcus Kane did. He fixed things, even things nobody knew needed fixing.